What if I told you that right now and today, there are organizations operating in broad daylight that are more powerful than some governments? Organizations that control entire cities, entire regions, entire countries, that have their own armies, their own courts, their own laws, that generate more money annually than some of the world's largest corporations. These are not fictional crime families from a Netflix series. These are real organizations with real power and real body counts that will leave you speechless. Stay with me. We begin in El Salvador with a gang that started in the streets of Los Angeles and became so powerful that it eventually controlled an entire country. This is MS-13. Mara Salvatrucha, founded in Los Angeles in the 1980s by Salvadoran immigrants who had fled a brutal civil war in their home country. They formed the gang originally for protection against other gangs that were already established in the neighborhoods where they lived. But what started as a defensive organization quickly became something else entirely, something far more dangerous. MS-13 spread rapidly through the United States, and then, when American authorities began deporting Central American criminals back to El Salvador, the gang followed, into a country that had been devastated by civil war, into communities with no jobs, no opportunities, and no functioning law enforcement. MS-13 filled the vacuum. By the 2000s, the gang had tens of thousands of members across El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and the United States. They controlled neighborhoods, extorted businesses, and murdered anyone who resisted. Their motto, kill, rape, control, was not just words. It was policy. At the peak of their power, El Salvador had one of the highest murder rates in the entire world. Entire neighborhoods were MS-13 territory. Bus drivers paid weekly extortion fees or were shot. Business owners paid or were killed. Young men joined or were killed. Young women were taken. The Salvadoran government eventually declared a state of emergency and began mass arrest, imprisoning tens of thousands of suspected gang members. The murder rate dropped dramatically, but MS-13 did not disappear. It adapted. It went underground. It spread further. Today, it operates in over 40 American states and multiple countries, and it remains one of the most violent criminal organizations on earth. From El Salvador, we travel to Mexico, where a different kind of criminal organization has reached a level of power that is almost impossible to comprehend. The Sinaloa Cartel. Founded in the northwestern Mexican state of Sinaloa, the cartel grew from a regional drug trafficking operation into a global criminal enterprise that generates an estimated $3 billion per year. $3 billion annually from drug trafficking alone. The Sinaloa cartel controls smuggling routes across the United States-Mexico border. It has corrupted politicians, judges, police officers, and military officials at every level of Mexican government. It has its own intelligence network, its own communications system, its own military wing, armed with weapons that rival those of the Mexican army. Its most famous leader, Joaquin Guzman Loera, known as El Chapo, became one of the most wanted men in the world. He was arrested twice by Mexican authorities. He escaped from maximum security prison twice. The second escape, through a mile-long tunnel that his people had dug directly beneath his prison cell, took years of planning and millions of dollars to execute. He was eventually captured a third time and extradited to the United States, where he was convicted in 2019 and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. But El Chapo's imprisonment did not stop the Sinaloa cartel. His sons took over. The cartel continued operating. The drugs continued flowing. The money continued accumulating because the Sinaloa cartel is not built around one man. It is built around a system so deeply embedded in the economic and political structure of Mexico that removing it would require dismantling significant parts of the country itself. From Mexico, we travel to Japan, where the world's most organized and most disciplined criminal organization has operated for centuries, the Yakuza. Japan's organized crime syndicates, collectively known as the Yakuza, are unlike any criminal organization anywhere else in the world. They have offices with nameplates on the doors. They publish newsletters. They hold press conferences. They have business cards. For most of the 20th century, the Yakuza operated in a strange semi-legal gray area in Japanese society. They were known, they were visible, and they were tolerated because they provided certain services that Japanese society found useful. They kept order in their territories. They mediated disputes. They provided employment for young men who had no other options. They even provided disaster relief. sending trucks of supplies to affected areas after the 1995 Kobe earthquake faster than the Japanese government could respond. But beneath this surface of quasi-respectability, the Yakuza ran extortion rackets, prostitution networks, drug operations, and financial fraud schemes that generated billions of yen annually. At their peak in the 1960s, the Yakuza had over 180,000 members in Japan. Today, due to aggressive law enforcement and changing social conditions, membership has dropped to around 25,000. But the Yakuza have not disappeared. They have simply become less visible, more sophisticated, more international, moving into cybercrime, financial fraud, and overseas operations in ways that make them harder to track and harder to prosecute than ever before. From Japan, we travel to Italy, to an organization that is in many ways the original model for every criminal organization that has come after it, the Sicilian Mafia. The Cosa Nostra. What are people? Founded in 19th century Sicily, the Mafia began as a system of private protection in a region where the state could not or would not provide security. Landowners hired Mafia men to protect their properties. The Mafia provided order and extracted payment for doing so. Over time, the Mafia expanded into extortion, into smuggling, into politics, into the heroin trade that connected Sicily to America and generated billions of dollars in the mid-20th century. The American Mafia, the families that controlled New York, Chicago, and other major American cities, grew directly from Sicilian roots. At its peak, organized crime in America was so powerful that it influenced elections, controlled labor unions, and operated its own justice system entirely parallel to the official one. The FBI's war against the American Mafia, beginning in the 1970s and continuing through the 1980s and 1990s, resulted in the prosecution and imprisonment of hundreds of senior organized crime figures. The power of the American Mafia was broken, or at least dramatically reduced. But the Sicilian Mafia itself, the original Cosa Nostra, proved more resilient, despite the arrest and conviction of its most senior leaders, including the notorious boss Salvatore Riina, known as the Beast, who was captured in 1993 after 23 years as a fugitive. The organization survived. It adapted. It moved into new criminal markets, and it continues to operate today, generating hundreds of millions of euros annually from construction fraud, drug trafficking, and the control of legitimate businesses throughout southern Italy. What connects MS-13, the Sinaloa Cartel, the Yakuza, and the Sicilian Mafia? They are separated by continents, by cultures, by centuries, but they share something fundamental. They all began in the same place, in communities where the official systems, the governments, the police, the courts, the economic structures had failed the people living in them, where there were no jobs, no security, no justice, no opportunity, and into that vacuum, these organizations stepped, offering employment, offering protection, offering a sense of belonging and identity to young men who had nothing else. The most dangerous gangs in the world did not create the conditions that allowed them to thrive. Those conditions already existed. The gangs simply exploited them. And until those conditions change, until the communities that produce these organizations are given real alternatives, the gangs will continue to exist, will continue to grow, will continue to recruit, because the most powerful recruitment tool any criminal organization has ever had is desperation. And desperation, in too many places in this world, is in unlimited supply. Subscribe to VaultX Mysteries, because the vault goes deeper than you think, and we are just getting started.